Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, welcome to the Edge channel. So today we are very honored to have Duc Luu, Mr. Duc Luu here on the Facebook. So a little bit of introduction of Duc. So Duc, of course, is the founder of the Edge, and currently he is the senior mission consulting partner of the Edge. So we are very happy to have valuable time from Duc to share more about his experience and also the latest admission trend to US and also hopefully UK and university and colleges. So first of all, Duc, how right now is the during the COVID-19 time, or we're at the edge of recovering from the COVID-19. How does it affect your life? Are you getting crazy on the admission?
Right. I think last season there was very little effect. There was no major delays by admissions offices on giving acceptance letters, so that wasn't a problem. I think the problem will be for the class of 2020. 2021. That's applying, and then possibly 2022. These two classes are dealing with high school temporary shutdowns, high school study from home policies, high schools choosing to do no grades for the past semester, both some for the fall, many for the spring, and of course with this study from home necessity, then we have problems with extracurricular activities because it does take multiple years to build them out and as well as apply for and then be voted in for leadership positions. And then finally, I think the problem lies in, of course, the summer, depending on where you live in the world. Our summer internships, summer schools, universities available this summer? And if they aren't, or you're not able to travel, then how are you supposed to deal with it?
Okay, let's take one thing at a time. I think most of the audience and parents and students are very concerned about the admission right now. Are your 2020 students affected because of the COVID-19? Did you find any differences between their admission compared to 2019-18, for example?
I don't think it has to do with COVID specifically. I think it may have to do with a broader issue of obviously the Edge's clients and my own clients are majority third culture children or Asian non-domestic international students. So I think there is a subtle effect, which I did not expect to be the case when the Trump presidency was announced. This sense of the fear or desiring for more domestic product, let's call it, we heard about that in the U.S. market, but we didn't really feel it in the first year of his presidency, and maybe not even in the second year of his presidency. But now we're seeing some kind of effect. I think we're seeing an effect in the admissions of international students of certain backgrounds, or types of international students, not necessarily separated by ethnicity. And of course, many universities have actually, in fact, I think last week or the week prior, there was a news article about one mid-tier university that took out an insurance policy on all its Chinese students. And just in case that between Trump and COVID, if the Chinese students disappeared, which in that university was something like 10 to 15% of their admissions or income, then they wouldn't be affected. And in fact, the reason why the article was presented was it sort of happened during COVID, right? That the students did not appear, the insurance contract was paid out.
Yeah. So that obviously politics changes the scenario of everything, economy, things like that. And what is the latest trend of the college admission especially specifically from state. Do university and colleges be more selective, or did they use other criteria to pick students?
That's a broad question. I think you have to talk about tiers
Mhm.
of universities and their expectations. So it seems one trend which is um, sort of the bottom half of each tier, right? So you've got the Ivies, you've got the top Ivies and bottom Ivies, or you have the mid tiers, top mid tier, bottom mid tier. So what you're sort of seeing is a push towards yield control, right? In other words, in the past, it would be a no-brainer for you to apply to a mid-tier Ivy, let's say Columbia, and then at the same time apply to NYU or Northwestern. And if you were capable to get into Columbia, you felt very confident for NYU, semi-confident for Northwestern. And we're seeing, and then let's add to that something like UCLA or UC San Diego. Those last two schools should be almost auto-accept for that top student. And that's not the case anymore. So there's definitely yield control where I'm seeing cases where suddenly a kid's getting, with that kind of Columbia University possible profile, getting rejected by UCLA, getting rejected by UC San Diego, getting deferred by NYU and Northwestern, right? So what that means is then, when we go back to crafting that list of schools that we always talk to families about, you can't just, be super excited that your son or daughter has a 4.0, a 1500, 35 plus SAT score and top 3 extracurriculars, and you say, okay, that's good enough. Like that's gonna auto accept you into a Northwestern, a Georgetown, and NYU, or we're now starting to see, maybe it's just 1 year or 2 years worth of data, of course, but now we're seeing a little bit more yield control.
Okay, so that is
yield management, is what they call it.
Sorry, again?
Yield management is what
yield
they call
management. Yeah, got it. I think that's a very important point to all the future applicants. So for 2021 entry or even 2022 entries, what kind of advice or tips you would recommend to the students to choose the right college, choose the right ECA or even exams? Do you have any recommendation to them?
Sure. So 21 is the most seriously impacted by COVID-19, right?
Yeah.
So again, what's happening? You have no extracurricular activities, especially if the extracurricular activity you're doing is a performance-based activity or one that requires group participation. Number 2 is you may have only pass-fail grades for at least second semester. Number 3, of course, is the standardized exams are all canceled.
Yeah.
Right. And we still, I believe, have notification as to when that will resume. We hope it will resume, at least in the August exams, right? But it may be as late as October or onwards. So to answer the last point, then yes, some universities are now saying this year 21 is test optional. Right, there are some universities that are saying that. I don't think that will be the case for 22 because they'll still, these are still major exams and a major component in the admissions profile, right? For school grades, again, that's quite difficult, right? Especially if you're moving into your junior year and you have suddenly pass-fail. It's supposed to be, a way to fix your current grades if your current grades were poor, right? And then 2, if you're doing very well, then it's supposed to solidify your ability at upper division courses, high HL, IB, or AP courses, and you're not able to do that. So unluckily, schools will kind of weight freshman and sophomore year a bit more than maybe some of us would like, right? And then the final issue is, of course, of extracurricular activities. You've got to find a way to take online classes in those extracurricular activities, participate in, again, online organizations, try to get local, hyper local. Hong Kong market is opening up again. Certain parts of China are opening up again. So this is a time to instead of go to Harvard University summer school, right, or ID Tech or something like that for the summer in the U.S. It's got to be about your local experience and how to try to find leadership in the local community with that experience. And then the final issue will be then the essays, right? I think when we lose a major quantitative component in the test prep, the testing, and the grades, then those essays start to blow up in importance, right? And so you really have to really define yourself, define your personality in those essays, and so I think that part's going to get a lot more important. Do interviews get more important? I don't think so, because again, universities don't have the resources, the time, and the money to be interviewing a lot of international students. So most of the interview process is more for, as we know, more for marketing purposes, more for engagement with the student and the family, or in this case, the family if it's really dealing with boarding school, than it is as a pre-qualifier for acceptance.
You mentioned that the essay is increasingly important because all the standardized tests is the student cannot take the standardized test. So is there any can you recommend one tip to the students? How can they improve their essay? Is there anyone can help them on that?
Well, first of all, you should start early, right? We usually start around July 1, right? And sometimes even earlier if possible, depending on your your post school and pre-heavy summer schedule. But I think July 1st is a perfect date to start the essay writing process. That essay writing process should be every other day or every 2 days. You should be you should be working on drafts. If you do have an admissions consultant, then you should really engage them in that process. If you have essay editors, you should engage them in that process. I think this is a really good year to remind ourselves that the essay mills, where you just send out your requirements and they write an essay for you, that's going to fail even more because it's going to be even more obvious that it's not your work. So I've always said, avoid the essay mills if you're trying to set out your own personality. I do think that, again, you should definitely use early decision, early action schools more to increase your chances. And those schools do care a lot about those essays because the pool in the EDEA is quite competitive, actually, right? Yeah. So again, how do you stand out besides those, quantitative aspects? It's the essays.
Yeah. I have no doubt that admission consultants play a very important part in the application, and many parents and students curious, what's the chance of getting a good college or universities with the help of the admission consultant? So, Duke, you are one of the admission consultants, a star consultant in Asia. So, what is the result in 2019? Did you get any students in good colleges?
Yeah. I think you guys have my stats, so I don't remember them off the bat, but I think I did okay. I think wasn't something like 25-30% into Ivies, and something like 70-something%, 80% into first tier school, top 3 choices, something like that. I think so I'm going to be very honest. I think my stats were a little bit low this year. And I think, like I said, I think it's I think in the years prior I was doing something like 40-50% into Ivies, right? So again, I think this year yield management definitely came into play. I will say that the last 3 years, I made a conscious decision to be more aggressive for my students. Right. In other words, in years past, for a while, I was applying a great kid into Columbia early decision, and then the last couple of years, I would take that kid and shoot them for HYPS, right? And 2 years prior, the 2 years before, that worked out really well, right? They got into big name Yale, Princeton, Stanford, etc. But this year, of course, when you play with fire, you can get a little burnt, right? So I did get my Yale, for example, but some of my other students who I thought had a better chance kind of dropped below what I liked, right? But that's one of those things where you really have to speak with the parents, right? Because it's a joint decision, right? It's important to say, look, we like this profile. We like what we've built over the last several years. Are we ready to play with the big boys, right? And it's I think what makes me maybe a better consultant than most consultants is, I've done my time at Yale. I've done my time, at Chicago Booth. And so I do understand the mentality of what it takes to be a superstar student and not just a star student. There is that little sliver of a difference, at least when it comes to admissions, between Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, and then the next tier of Ivies. Whether we like it or not, does it, that's the case. Does it decide future success? Definitely not, right? And so we have to kind of take that with a grain of salt. And so I think in the past, I've said, look, we don't need hypes because frankly, they're all early action, right? And so you really need to risk and wait until April for a result, or would you be happy with Brown, Columbia, UPenn, Cornell? And, if they're being very smart about it, there's like, well, what's the difference, right? What's really the difference between Cornell from a branding perspective with a Princeton or a Yale? There really, really isn't. From an educational perspective, there's very, almost no difference in my opinion, right? And so same thing when you move to the next tier, the same kind of question, right? So you're saying to yourself, okay, I really want to get into Northwestern. If that's the highest caliber that you and your consultant have decided you can get into. Well, are you willing to take that shot, or are you willing to take a step down to, your Georgetowns, your Vanderbilts, your JHU with the right major, right?
Can you share any one case that you come across that you made your magic to help them to get into their dream college? It doesn't necessarily to be Ivies, but the college or the subjects that they really like. Any one of the case?
Yeah. Sure. I think one decent case was 2 years ago or so, where it's an interesting case in the sense that, how do I say this? It was an interesting case in the sense that the student was, again, top 5% in their class, right? So top 5% in their class, solid SAT scores by the time, the edge was finished with them. I think it's 1,500 plus. IB 42 out of 42, right? Wow. But the student was Chinese, okay. Right? And so as we know, those scores are very standard for a Chinese student who's trying to get into an Ivy caliber school. So in that case, the interesting discussion was what kind of Ivy caliber school do we want? Their family was very much finance and sort of investment banking, right? But the student wanted to do more economics and possibly econometrics, right? And so what we did was we spent a lot of time in the essays doing two things. One, creating a backstory or developing the backstory of that student in such a way that it's frankly appealing, right? To the schools, telling a story that's very different from maybe other Chinese students that are applying. Number two was forcing him to articulate economics at an incredibly deep level, right? To prove to his audience that, yeah, I'm not just an IB higher level econ major, right? I'm not just an AP econ major. I can really think about econ and its effect upon the world at a deep, level where, I would be very comfortable eventually working for the World Bank, right? So it's almost like showing your technical prowess, right, in the major that you're applying for, as well as showing your depth of what we like to call at the edge, the connective tissue.
Yeah.
Right? How do you connect the ideas within your essay so that I go, oh, you're actually a high-level strategic thinker, right? And you're not just, a programmed, robot, And so I think that was very successful. And so, in that case, actually, we was one of my cases where I went higher, right? Actually, I went higher with not really, the parents were incredibly happy with it. They were a little bit afraid to go higher. So we applied to Princeton. We got deferred from Princeton, right? But in the end, we got accepted by UPenn and Cornell, right? And in the major of economics, right? And so that was a case where we had to be very narrow in the strategy, but we had to, I really had to work with that student in building his sort of thought process so that he's able to write at that level when July 1 hit. So we had a lot of discussions, intellectual discussions, in the months prior to that. So that would be one issue. I think, and actually, recently this past season, that student came to me to transfer, right? Because they wanted to do more, and then I helped them transfer to UPenn Wharton. So they're incredibly happy right now.
Good, very good. I see that. I clearly see that the importance of admission consultant really help the students pick themselves, and not only in the essay part, but always when I work with you, you always say the strategic persona. How to build up the image and also the profile is very important in the admission. So we know the importance of admission consultant. So today we're also very happy to have another admission consultant of the Edge. So now let's invite Karen. So Karen is our admission consultant based in Hong Kong right now. So she has a bunch of experience in the UK, of course, a graduate in the UK, right? Can you first of all introduce a little bit about yourself to the audience?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm Karen. I'm an admissions consultant with The Edge, and I specialize in the UK admissions process. Personally, I graduated from the UK at the Cambridge University. I have my BA and MA in natural sciences. And I really enjoy helping students to achieve their goals as well, just like the way I did.
Good. So now we're going to have a little bit of a panel discussion. So we three can have a discussion on the admission consultant and also how does it affect the admission result of the students. So Duc just talked about a lot about essays. How can the student write a good essay to appeal the college or university? So is there any differences between the admissions between UK and also the US? How they perceive an essay in the application process? So maybe Duc, you can start first. Yeah, I know that.
I mean, I'm gonna let Karen answer that because my answer is totally different.
I can't agree more. I can't agree more.
Yeah, totally different. You know, I personally used to work on a lot of Oxbridge applications too, and it's a very different thought process and a different prep process too, right? Um, I'll give you my general opinion. Number one is that because of the for Oxbridge the heavy interview criteria, right, and the essays themselves, the quality of the essays themselves, you generally have to prep the essays on a content basis in much more advanced time, right? It's actually kind of like the econ case that I mentioned, where you're probably prepping your students 6 months or longer in advance to that essay, because they have to really be able to defend their love for the subject. I think of applying to the UK and Oxbridge much more like applying to graduate school, right? It's like, you know, you're going to spend 3 years of your life studying one thing. If you hate that subject after the first semester, you have to leave the school and change and reapply completely. So it's like, why the heck do you really want to do that? Versus the US, it's like, you know, you can change your major 18 times, you know, over the weekend. We don't care, you know, and just at some point you have to take a certain number of courses. So the thought process is very different. The organization of the essay is very different from the U.S. undergraduate essay.
What do you think, Karen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the UK present statements is very different from the US essay. As you just point out, it is a very subject-specific statement of yours. So in the UK process, you only write one present statement for all the courses and universities that you apply to. So this is different from the US system. And it has to be very subject specific, because by the time you apply to the university, you already have to commit to a subject of your area of interest. So the way you draft your present statement, the style of writing, it will be very different, you know, what to include, what not to include. And the decision makers are different as well. So for the UK process, the people who will be deciding whether or not to give you the place or to give you the interview chance will be the academics of the university. So
right.
This is exactly why you need a longer time to prepare for your present statement. It has to be content rich. It has to be subject specific. And there are also other admin stuff as well. You know, there are very strict rules about the word limit. You can only write, 47 lines, 4,000 characters. There are standardized, centralized submission timelines. So some really hard deadlines that you have to adhere to. So there is a long list of things that you have to take note of and prepare in advance. And it can be a very daunting experience.
Yeah, I think Karen mentions a good point. About who reads the essays in the UK, and specifically Oxbridge. It is very similar. It's maybe similar to certain Ivy League schools or certain specific programs at Ivy League schools, such as Cornell, where the dean of that particular school or the professors at that particular school will read your application rather than the general admissions committee, right? And so for them, they don't want fluff, right? Again, it's back to hyper-specific, not just the passion anymore, right? So if you think about the U.S. college essay, it's a lot about passion and describing how you connect to that passion. With the UK one, it moves towards specificity of why you need to be this, graduate with this degree. Why do you, what are the technical skills you've learned in the last year and a half that allow you to believe that you should be doing this major, right? I think another major area for the UK schools in general is, I think, a UK consultant, at the edge would be much stronger, frankly, than a US consultant at the edge, because of knowing exactly what major to apply to at what university, Okay, because again, in the US, that doesn't matter. You know, if you want to do natural sciences or you want to do econ, Yale is great for both. It doesn't matter whatsoever. And they're not going to penalize you because you're one or the other, right? Whereas, you know, with Oxbridge, there are placements, right? There are certain counts that they expect per major. And so that it goes back to that sort of Asian mentality for Asian universities, right? There's only so many places for certain positions. The UK sort of the UK is the same way.
Mm-hmm. Did you get any help, assistance from other professionals, or say, for example, admission consultant when the time you applied Cambridge?
No, I mean, I wish I had the support from someone, some professional advice, so that I can go and try different ways on my own. But I guess nowadays it's better, we have access to more resources online, and definitely, the role of an admissions consultant is here to help you with the process. You don't have to do it on your own. You need help from others to increase your chance.
You know, I always say, people ask me, why do I need an admissions consultant? I think one answer is you truly don't know the process, right? You don't know the process. Frankly, your family doesn't know the process. You know, your parents are first generation, or they are university grads, but they're Asian university grads, right? So having someone as a guide is incredibly useful for that. Number two is motivation during, not just the application season, but the years before. You know, at the Edge, we've always been committed to multi-year consulting. It is not just one little aspect that we work on. And in many cases, one of the sort of criticisms that people used to have about my work is and my results, they're like, oh, Duke, you have such great results. Clearly you only select the best students, to work with you. And Henry, as you know, my cases are 3-4 years out, right? So I'm like, if I am selecting my students, I must be the greatest fortune teller in the world, because I still get that result when the kid is looking at me and they're 14 years old and they got one semester of straight A's, and suddenly I know, right? And then of course the third part, I think some families have, because some of my clients actually did go to the Ivies, for example, themselves, the parents themselves, but now they're like, oh, it's 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I don't remember anything. I don't know how the process works today, and it's far more competitive today. They say to me that they just need someone in between, right? That they say, from 0 to age 14, the kid was totally controllable. Right? And then suddenly from 15 onwards, the kid has hormones, no longer is mom and dad right, and they're just always surprised. They're like, how come like when you say the exact same thing, Duke, they listen to you, and mom and dad they do not listen to. And I think that a good consultant is that third voice of reason.
Mm-hmm. Very important. I'm sure that all the parents are customers, students are very concerned about that. And I'm sure the admission consultant can help them a lot. So with the Edge, we have over 10 admission consultants on the board. And at the same time, we have a lot more admission consultants staying in the state, in the UK. So they are on the ground and they are in Hong Kong as well. So I'm sure that we have one good consultant for every single customers. So if audience and students, parents, if you have any interest on connecting with any admission consultant with us, please do email us, or just send a simple message on the Facebook, on our website, and we will have a pre-screening session for you. So we offer 30 minutes complimentary consulting sections for you with one consultant. We can help you to apply for the successful universities and colleges. So that is very important. So
I want to go ahead and interrupt you and mention sort of two things, right? Since I did found the company. I think number one, especially in the time of COVID, I think the Edge was incredibly prepared for COVID, right? We built out a full online learning system that our tutors and our test prep team can get on and use with our students. So as I see our internal news, it was incredibly streamlined that process. Our students who are live students moved onto our online platform, and we're able to very quickly connect to our tutors and test prep. So I think that the idea of being global is and very much and Asia regional. We're definitely Asia regional today, right? And the other thing is, of course, let's not forget that there's the consulting aspect, but there's also the test prep aspect, and then there's also the tutoring aspect. There's no question that I have constantly used our test prep team. I've constantly used our academic tutors when my students have problems or when my students, have to get a certain score. Obviously I was a test prep expert back in the day. I don't touch test prep anymore. I just go, I have no idea. Please go to our Edge test prep team. They typically get you 1,500. Don't talk to me until you get the score.
Yes, you're right. So at the Edge, we have a bunch of very brilliant teachers who can help the student on test preparation and also the academic part during their school, regardless if it's a online class or in the classroom as well. So we have all full suite service to the students and also the parents, so that we can help them, guide them step by step to their dream college and university. If you want to go to US, we have a bunch of admission consultants and also teachers who can help them. Of course, we have Karen here to help the students to the UK universities. So we have full suite to help the students. So I guess that's the end of our live. Really thank you, Duke, and also Karen to present on the Facebook Live. So again, please like us, follow us on the Facebook, Instagram, and also email us, call us if you are interested in getting help from a admission consultant. We offer a 30 minutes free consultation for you. So let's start planning your college admission today. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.